Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in. Well, we continue to get blown away with this data coming through on people resigning 4 million, 4+ million. It seems to be growing every month. Like this is just compounding. We have talked about the Great Resignation, and I still get curious on what is going on. And when I got into professional speaking, I went and joined the National Speakers Association. Great organization. I've learned so much, and we go around to different tables before COVID, and you can sit with a pro, and they give you some tips. And I got the pleasure to sit down with Vivian Blade, who did give me some great ideas. And she's the author of 3 different books and a workbook. Recently put out Influence and Talent Development. And excited to have Vivian on the show today. Welcome, Vivian.
Thank you so much, Trevor. It's so good to be with you. Thanks.
So, what's going on? You're publishing about influencing. People are leaving. You know, this is a large manufacturing audience, and you've worked in manufacturing. What's going on? What are you seeing, Vivian? What are people telling you?
Yeah. Well, everybody is hearing so much in the news these days about the great resignation and trying to do the great reset so that we can retain those employees. But people are really reevaluating their lives, reevaluating their choices. They have more choices than ever before, it seems. And they're making different decisions for themselves and for their lives. So they're searching for organizations that align with their values, align with their lifestyle that they want to have, and making the moves that are going to fit to how they see themselves in the life that they want to live and the purpose they want to lead in their lives.
So 20 years ago, the way that we led in manufacturing was pretty rough, right? And there's definitely, there were people that were ahead of their time, but there's also that culture of, you got to make it happen, dude. Like put the pressure on to get the results. And we just can't lead with like that anymore. I mean, it's still happening and to an astonishment, but this whole labor shortage should drive some different results. So what do you remember from working in manufacturing, and what are you seeing as the biggest changes now to address that for our listeners today?
Yeah. So as a boomer myself, a lot of when I entered the workforce, the approach was, you go to work for an employer and you work for your career, pretty much. I mean, you get on a career path and you set yourself toward those career aspirations that you have, which is certainly what I did. I worked for GE Appliances, started out in healthcare and with Humana, but then moved over to GE Appliances. And so I was on a trajectory to build my career in leadership roles. And in that time, we have a lot of leadership style. If you remember, a lot of the old way of thinking and leading with command and control, or, do as I say, or very directive, I'll say. And even as we look at a lot of the different styles of leading and emotional intelligence, we can see how some of the different leadership styles are beginning to take shape based on the expectations of our workers in the workforce. So I'm seeing a lot of shift around. And again, especially as we get back to this great resignation that we're experiencing, where people want to be more involved in their workplace and making decisions about their work and contributing in the workplace in valuable ways. And what I challenge leaders to do is to earn the followership from the people who work for them so that they are leading more with influence and being that person of influence, that leader of influence, and engaging people along the journey rather than having to lead with, again, just kind of dictating and telling people what to do.
So what's an example that you remember that you would see in an environment working in manufacturing before, and what's the shift from that needs to happen today?
Yeah. I experience within the same span of time that I was working in the Lean Six Sigma organization, I had different leaders during my tenure within that particular department. I worked in different areas in GE Appliances. And I remember distinctly a couple of different leadership styles that I experienced from that one tenure. And one leader who had come from a manufacturing environment, his career was built directly in manufacturing. And he had long-term and probably mentors who taught him what he thought his leadership style should have been, which was more command control type. Scare people, almost, if you will. And I remember feeling much that way a lot of times and, being concerned. And that's when people don't talk to you. If you lead that way, people are afraid to let you know what's going on, and they have to feel like they put the shield up, having to feel like they have everything in control and come across to you as the leader with this facade. And then you get surprised if you are the leader on the other side. So I remember that particular leader was also not only treating his own employees that way, but peers that way, and was very intentionally asked to consider his leadership approach. And HR and talent development worked with him very closely to change that leadership style, which he did. He grasped that and intentionally worked on that, but it took time to change what he was used to. And compare that to another leader who, in Six Sigma, and I'd spent a couple of different tenures in Lean Six Sigma, one as a black belt and then another time coming back as a master black belt. But where I had probably some of the best leaders I've ever had, because they were very much the coach type of leader, very much engaging, invested in me and my development and my growth, also giving me some leeway to try some things. Nice. And again, sort of coaching me through those times, and very much a partnership rather than an adversarial sort of scare you sort of, into your work or compliance. I'll say compliance is not what you want, and not what employees in today's time frame will tolerate. They won't tolerate that anymore. They want a different kind of experience. So those are some of my personal experiences directly with some of the managers that I happen to work for.
Yeah, and you have to have someone at that top level. And what I find interesting, what you're saying is that, there was some challenges with direct reports, but it does start with the peers, right? Because it's that peer group. And if you're doing that in the peer group, then it's going to be going through the whole organization. So that's when people ask about maybe some supervisory training or some coaching in that area. And it's kind of like, well, what's coming from the top, right? And what's being tolerated as far as leadership styles. And like anything that's difficult, it's there for a reason. And I really believe that I'm excited for manufacturing. And that is odd because there's job shortages like crazy, but I think this is going to be the shift for our industry. And there's urgency where it's like, okay, I can't lead how I did 20 years ago. And I want to do something different to keep these people. The other thing, talk to me more about the autonomy. Like, how do leaders that want to influence because they know a lot, right? They want to help their people with what they know. But then there's a counteraction. So how do people balance that influence as far as autonomy versus making sure that they have all the information they need?
Yeah, and that really is the coach leading as a coach and influencing, guiding from a level of influence. You mentioned, Trevor, how important it always has been to get results, and a lot of the focus on getting results, delivering the numbers, and working in an environment like GE where every month and every quarter, you make a commitment to your numbers, you've got to meet and beat that actually.
Oh, yeah.
Because we would not miss our commitments to Wall Street. So every division, every business unit, every department was highly focused on your individual, your team, your business unit numbers, your metrics, your goals, so that we as a company and an organization could do that. And we best do that when we can, going back to that coach or that influencing behavior. And if you don't mind, I want to share with you what some of the key principles are for being influential, being that leader, being that coaching leader, and that mindful leader, so that you can meet your goals, meet your results, and engage your team and your employees and bring all the best that they have to bear in getting those results. So there are 5 key influence principles, and I use this acronym SCALE.
Okay.
That is a framework for how we elevate our influence, or how we scale our influence to have greater impact as leaders. And the S stands for social capital in that acronym. C is for courage. The A is for authenticity. L is leaning in with passion. And the E is engaging a diverse and inclusive workplace community. So if you'd like to, we can dive into some of those areas and talk a little bit more about,
We got capital budgets. How does that fit in?
Yes, right. Well, as you think about capital and where you invest your capital as a business, and then you get dividends and you get benefits from those investments. And
You
you're
got
gonna
me
make
interested.
wise decisions about where you place your resources, your capital resources. So we also have social capital, which is built in our relationships. And if we want to be influential, what I challenge you to do is think about how you can selflessly add value to others. Even if you're a leader or if you're a peer, working with other people, what value do I have to bring to bear? And how can I use that value to help someone else without expecting anything in return? There's one of my clients who does this well. She works outside of the manufacturing industry, in fact, but as we work together in leadership development, I could see with the leaders that we had in our program, the relationship that she had with them, because she genuinely was concerned about them. And she did whatever she could to help them with whatever challenges they were facing, with the resources they needed, with sometimes a listening ear to just be that sounding board, which sometimes we need as leaders, because it sometimes gets lonely when we're at the top. So she was selflessly giving of herself and just encouraging and inspiring that actually the same type of behavior by the way she modeled that, but really investing. And then that comes back in dividends to what people are willing to give in their work.
So what you're saying is social capital being, we have an organization where there's more assets on the human side of how we help each other. So I was just talking to someone that some of the departments maybe weren't working as well together, and they were talking about, hey, it's not my job. So that's kind of like they don't have a lot of capital, is what you're saying.
Right. Right. And, we often hear that term, that phrase, well, it's not my job. And certainly people have so much on their plate, so much that they have to do. But really, when we take ownership of everything, the end goal, the end result for the organization, it may not be directly within our sphere of responsibility, but ultimately wherever in the organization there is a need, it's going to touch us, and we can influence progress. We can influence outcomes for our customers if we have that kind of giving attitude.
But it sounds like that's where, from the top, what is the overall outcome? Like, how are we measuring outcome? Are we measuring outcome into a specific department? And I remember working for a plant, and our department was doing really well, and I thought, well, our bonuses should probably be better for our department, right? And it's like, no, that's not the way it works, Trevor. And I realized that's I was grateful for that, because that structure would have driven me to the wrong behavior.
Right.
It wouldn't have fit through me authentically. But if we don't set the path for social capital from the top, as how you tie it to outcome, is that what our listeners need to kind of maybe ask themselves, or ask their leaders, or
Yeah. And, you bring up a good point, Trevor, because we have to think about, how are people being measured? And are you really measuring outcomes as a team or individuals? Are you creating a culture of individualism and competition? Or are you creating a collective, we are in this together, and let's see what it takes and support each other to get it done? Is your customer, are your clients at the forefront of your mission, your vision, your goals? And what can we do to come together to take care of our customers? Ultimately, at the end of the day, if you don't have customers, if they're not paying you for your products and services, then you don't have anything.
absolutely get them focused on the client, get them focused off of what's in front of us directly.
Yeah. Let me share this other example and thought around that. As a product manager, I worked in a product management role in cooking products when I was with GE Appliances. And, if you think about the limited dollars that we have to invest in product development, new products that we're bringing to the marketplace, and we had several product lines that were vying for limited resources. And if you looked at your product line as, I've got to get everything I can for my goals and try to make my numbers, and not think about, if you think about appliances, for example, you think about the whole home, the whole kitchen. Okay, maybe you have a great cooking product, a great range, but if somebody buys your brand and they have an inferior refrigerator, or dishwasher, then that removes brand equity. That's a ding on your brand equity. So you have to think more holistically.
So I love the term social capital, because I think it just fits in with manufacturing. So a lot of times, like you said, it's the output, it's a measurement. What do we need to be measuring maybe different then? Or how do we create that culture of social capital to say, hey, how are we doing today on social capital? How are you finding organizations are doing that?
I think it's a couple of areas. One is, again, looking at your metrics. What are you measuring? Are you measuring simply and rewarding individual goals and accomplishments, or the collective effort that we as a business unit are achieving together? And then secondly, how are you bringing your teams together to work together? Are people working in silos? Or are you intentional as the C-suite in bringing cross-functional teams together to work together to solve problems? Ultimately, we're solving problems for our customers. So how do we come together as a business to do that? I also am a project management professional and teach project management for the University of Louisville College of Business. And just recently in Harvard Business Review, the November-December 2021 issue was an article about the new project economy, and how it's our work going forward is less about just working functionally, but we have these projects that we're bringing cross-functional teams together to accomplish for value creation for our customers. That's how we have to work.
Vivian, is that going to create more meetings?
You work effectively. And one of the key things in project management is to use meetings wisely. So yeah, and we have so many tools. We have so many technology tools and the way we can bring people together and work together and collaborate. So better than ever. So
Yeah.
don't add more meetings just to add more meetings.
And it just ran through my mind based on some conversations I had in the last week. But at the same token, we say sometimes that, well, I just don't interact with that other manager that much or that other leader. Well, that's not healthy, right? Because there's probably some ways that we can help each other. So I like that concept of, how are we bringing people together by taking that particular initiative or project and having everybody contribute to that? Is that a different way to build that social capital? Because now, if the whole organization sees that, this is kind of how we function, we do collaborate, then when it's 3:00 in the morning and there's 3 different departments and they're trying to solve an issue, they already see this is how we operate here, right? We see it that our leader does that. We know what that expectation is going to be, and maybe that's the influence that we're looking for.
Right. Yeah, that's really building a culture around that. And, that aligns nicely with the L, which is leaning in with passion. So if we're really passionate about what we're doing, if we're really passionate about our mission, if we're really passionate about serving our customers, then we are going to come together and work together to solve those problems, to find ways to add value, to innovate differently, to innovate collectively so that we're a much better organization and we're much more competitive, we're on the forefront, and we become that workplace that is engaging and inspiring, where I say that people want to work and they feel valued.
That is the difference. It is shifting that mindset of that 20 years ago. But it's hard when we've done it that way. When are you seeing organizations really making a commitment to make that change? Like obviously there's the retention and jobs being lost, but I like the whole leaning in. Authenticity, definitely seeing a lot of that as saying, before it's kind of like don't show your weaknesses. Now it's kind of be real. Right? Be real, and if you're frustrated, just say that you're frustrated. Don't just yell randomly. What's making that shift? What's the driver? If I'm working in an organization, I'm like, man, it's like I should get Trevor and Vivian in here, but they just don't want to change. What's the advice to them? Like, how do they spur that change?
I think you have to really take the temperature of your culture, be honest with yourself, reflect and see what impact that is truly having on your organization, on the health and well-being of your people. Are you a resilient organization based on your culture, or are you driving a lot of chaos and confusion, a lot of dysfunction, a lot of stress, a lot of overwhelm for people? And are you getting, sort of back to the results of our customers?
Yeah.
Really, are you remaining competitive? It ultimately comes to outcomes. We are in business because, we are achieving outcomes, creating value, generating revenue and net income so that we can continue our business, a profit for our shareholders, all of that. We become detrimental to ourselves when we don't have a culture that can create that's creating value. So I'm seeing organizations, especially now because they're being forced to. Everything has been different because of the pandemic. Workplace employees are stressed. We've been forced to pivot and work differently. People are leaving their jobs. They are demanding a different type of work environment, different values from organizations that they work for. And so a lot of those dynamics are creating the shift for companies to really think seriously about, we got to do something different here. We can't go on as business as usual because we're hurting in a lot of different ways. And how do we turn this ship around from a people standpoint, which is your most important asset, your human capital? So those things are creating current urgency toward change.
So that is a full circle, and it's making sure you're focused on the right outputs, not the micro, but the macro outputs. And hey, you're just like me. I'm feeling burnout. You're feeling burnout. We're in this together. This is not serving either of us. What do we want to do different? Because we've got a lot of meetings. I can't get on the shop floor. I'm not really working with the other departments. And then it's almost like that reset of like saying, okay, what are we doing then? Like, how is this behavior serving us? Because it seems like we're running around. We can never have a minute to kind of reset. So if I'm feeling like that, you're probably feeling like that. And we know that from the science, if we even acknowledge that, saying we're all feeling a little burnout, and let's focus on if this is the end result and this is the outcome, are we putting our efforts in the right area?
Yeah, I like that. And I want to go back to the authenticity to that point, because with that, with the feelings of overwhelm, everything that we're going through, the stress that all of the circumstances today are creating for us, we have to put on this facade. We often feel like, and you mentioned this earlier, Trevor, that we've all got it together, and that we're managing all the balls flawlessly. And what people want from leaders today is that authenticity. Move away from the imposter syndrome, or the superhero syndrome. Also, I'm trying to be somebody I'm not, or I've got it all together, and be authentic. Yes, we do want you to connect and share your vulnerability and the fact that you're not perfect, that you are also human. That does not mean that you're weak, but we also want you to own that. And we're not inviting an environment of complaining or moaning, but of recognition that we are human and you have to deal with it before you can move forward. The empathy piece says, I hear you, I understand, I can relate to what you're dealing with. Now let's find a path to move through this, to work through it, to regenerate, to enhance our well-being so that we can move forward, and in a way that demonstrates that I really care about you as an individual. That piece is not a facade too, that we're authentic in our care and concern for our fellow employees, and that we're doing things to support them. We're providing benefits, we're providing support services within our organization that helps to support the well-being of our greatest asset that we have.
Ties back right down to that social capital, and that social capital, you want to have some good manufacturing, you want to have some good robotic capital, you want to have some good automations with some great error proofing, but you need people to run that.
Got to have people somewhere. And
so in Vivian's book, you will not find a chapter on just show them the org chart.
Right.
Because that was 20 years ago. Her book is brand new and just out, and I'm going to leave some links in the podcast and her contact information. So Vivian, thank you so much for coming out here and having this conversation with us today. And I am leaving with that whole of, it is manufacturing, and you go back to those outputs, and it is true. Are we focused on those right outputs? Structure drives behavior, drives results. And I love your terminology, followership. See, I even get it mixed up. But followership as a leader of mindful influence.
That's right.
What a great quote of yours to lead with. So it falls right into mindfulness manufacturing. Thanks so much, Vivian.
Trevor, it has been a great pleasure to be with you, and I just trust that your listeners have just gotten great value from our conversation today.
Hey folks, appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Haven't subscribed yet? Do it now. Remember, if you want results, the key is increasing your awareness of how you show up.